Hello everyone, let's go to that. This is Cambrian Man, and we're going to do a bit of an update on Let's Dev kind of thing. I apologize, I haven't recorded anything for a long time. I have been working on things. I've worked on, for instance, my ZZT online game thing called HashZap. You can find a link somewhere on my site for the first dev thing, and I really wanted to record another thing of that, but the truth is most of the changes were all internal, and so there wasn't a lot of interesting stuff to show you. Yeah, apparently I broke it. Oh no, I didn't. Okay. So I felt like, well, what else did I do? I worked on an Ouya multiplayer game called Ogre, which I stopped for two reasons. Because the development on the engine I was using, Loom, seemed to have slowed down, if not stopped. I'm not entirely sure what's going on with them. It looked really cool when I started, but I ended up with the problem of waiting for them to add features to make it playable, and the features never seemed to come. So that was a bit of a problem, right? Now, so that was that. I just worked on a website for my day job, although I don't program as a day job, but I worked on a website to give math quizzes to kids because all of them are terrible out there. So I've actually done a lot of coding, but none of it was stuff that I felt like showing. But I think we'll do another game because honestly, at the end of the day, as much as big projects and fun projects are cool, I really like doing like the games that I enjoyed as a youth, right? That's the kind of stuff that's really fun to develop. So to that end, working on a new game. I'll show it to you first before I go through the code. Here it is. It is tentatively called WonderZone. I realize that the tile map should be much bigger than what it is. It should be twice as big. It is made in Phaser, which is very similar to Flixel, except it is for HTML5, and it is it has a lot of features, right? Even more so. Flixel had a number of features that were basically good for making games quickly, but it lacked something in flexibility. And Flashpunk kind of went the other way, where it's very flexible and configurable, but it didn't have as many convenience features. Phaser seems to really strike a really nice balance. It is, however, still in pretty heavy development, so it's been a little tricky to figure things out based on the examples. But even so, it seems to be more mature than, say, when I was doing Loom, which had some features, but, well, I'll give you an example, right? For Loom, one thing that I was missing was I didn't have a way to do this kind of crisp pixel art style. Everything was blurry. In order to do that, you'd have to go in and change the source code of the engine, which broke every time that they came out with a new version. Not cool. And the collision detection I did was really slow for reasons I don't quite understand, because it was very similar to Flixel's, and given how much more power Loom should be having, I don't know why it was so slow. So I was waiting for it to have proper physics support, but that was not in there. Phaser has all that stuff. It has collision. The only thing it doesn't have that I really wish it had would be slopes. And I may need to hack them in because this game kind of relies on it. So this is WonderZone. If you are a Sega player from the 80s, you may remember a game called Fantasy Zone. Actually, a series of games. There's Fantasy Zone, Fantasy Zone 2, Fantasy Zone The Maze, which was Fantasy Zone as a co-op Pac-Man clone, which is actually really fun because it's like Pac-Man except you can shoot things, which makes Pac-Man a lot more fun. So this is WonderZone. WonderZone is going to be a, how do I put it? Fantasy Zone as a Metroidvania. So you fly around, shoot things, and explore and get upgrades. So one of the cool mechanics of Fantasy Zone was that you could buy upgrades, not just like different kinds of weapons, but things including faster engines and shields and things like that. So we're going to add that. How much I'm going to do, I don't know. I'm going to do it until I get bored, basically. I don't even know if I'll finish this and release it. I hope I will. But I don't promise anything. It's really cool to be doing one game a month, but I'm not going to do that for this. Because it's already too late into November to finish in 1 month. And I kind of like... I've liked working on bigger projects. It's more fun, I think, to be able to set goals and work towards them. Whereas one game a month, I felt like I kind of needed to throw things out there and just do stuff, which was the point. But it wasn't as much fun. It meant I didn't learn as much. I had to do what I knew. So anyway, a couple things you may notice. The controls on this are a little bit floaty. That is intentional. He has some momentum before he comes to stop. And his feet. In Fantasy Zone, you could walk around the ground, right, and pick up things. You collect coins and things that pop out. Fantasy Zone, the original, was basically a Defender clone. This is going to be a little bit different. There's still going to be monster layers that spawn enemies. There's still going to be random enemies that just spawn throughout the world. But it's also going to be obviously less brutal because, the old one was an old shmup. If you got hit once, you died. Although you did have shields, which in Fantasy Zone 2, anyway, you had shields which let you absorb some bullets. So I think I'll have that too. So the basic idea, you go around, gather stuff, you can buy upgrades, you can also find upgrades as part of the thing. You also had shooty guns, which I haven't added, and bombs, which I will also add. They'll be like the first upgrade, right, after you fight the first mini-boss. And then you'll be able to go to shops and stuff. Now, the other thing is there probably will not be lives. It'll be like checkpoints where you save in a place and then you have to make it through and do stuff, and explore around, find different areas. Metroidvania style, which is basically a mashup of some of my favorite games. I love the art style of Fantasy Zone. It was super colorful, and obviously I'm also a fan of games like Aquaria, so it's a little bit of both. So yeah, the point was the floatiness is intentional because you will get upgrades that will negate that, or minimize it anyway. So you start out pretty weak, and then you have to upgrade. So let's take a look at what we're doing. Right, so first up, I'm writing this in CoffeeScript because I like CoffeeScript, and it is a much more pleasant language to write JavaScript in than JavaScript. It's just less verbose. So if you see here, this is my game file. This is my player, which I've just barely started adding stuff. And thankfully, Phaser already has like arcade physics built in, which is awesome. It means I don't have to add it like I did with the monsters. Will show you the way. It has various loaders, which is cool. I'm wondering if it has a JSON loader. If not, I'm probably gonna, if it doesn't, then I'll probably have to write a little plugin that loads packs of things for different levels, because I hate having like all my things hard-coded in here. I want to have like a JSON file that has all this stuff. Now the one thing about CoffeeScript is that it has to be compiled into JavaScript. There are ways around that, but for a game, and especially, I want to be able to do that. So the way it works is that we're having grunt, and that whenever I make any changes, it recompiles it. So it's just sitting here in the background, recompiling anything. The other thing I have in Sublime is I have a plugin which lets me see the compiled output, so I can always check for compilation for errors and things like that. I have source maps, but I haven't gotten to the point where I really need them. It's kind of interesting because I've been doing web stuff for like the last couple of months, and when you're writing a game, when you're writing a game like this, everything just feels very different. It's all so object-oriented and imperative, and it's like it feels totally different than writing anything in different places, which is good and bad, because I feel like games are so different than doing anything else that it almost teaches you how to do things in a way that doesn't apply in other places. So this will be on GitHub. I don't know whenever I feel like it. Oh, and the other thing I recommend is that there is a web server called Mongoose Web Server. This is 45 kilobytes, and it basically runs a web server, because you can't do all this kind of loading stuff from a local thing. Phaser, I believe, suggests something called WAMP, which also has PHP and a bunch of other things, but I don't really want to do that. I'd like to have a 45 kilobyte web server that I can have, which I think is pretty neat. All right, so yeah, I'll show things, certainly not every day, but every couple days whenever I have something new to show. I don't think people are interested in seeing art development, so I'm not going to do that. I'll show you level design and things like that. I haven't done any of the tiles, obviously. I just started it, and there's no collision, although I could add that pretty quick. I don't know. Let me know what you're interested in. If you want to see more of the development coding process, I can do that. If you want me to walk you through, I can do that. If you want to see other stuff, I can do that. I don't really know what people are interested in watching. But there you go. And I'm certainly not good enough to do kind of a tutorial series. So I'm not. That's not going to happen. Yeah, WonderZone. That's going to be the game. Should be a fun little shmup type game that I don't think has very many coding challenges, which is bad, but it also means that I can actually do things. So that's good. All right, see y'all later.